Week 2 of the 2024 college football season is officially in the books, and Week 3 is on the horizon. Joining us, he does every single Wednesday, helping us break it all down, our good friend Jake Crain of Crain Company, who just hit 150,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's a lot of subscribers, and it's well-deserved. Jake, appreciate you taking the time. Congrats on the success, and really excited to chat today.
Oh man, I appreciate it. It's weird. Like I'm not one of those people that like really keeps up with like views and stuff. We just kind of go in there and talk and let it lay where it lays. But no, it's a big milestone, man. We just the start. We're gonna tell you what we really think, I guess. We're not gonna be apologists for anybody. We're just gonna call it how we see it. And it's again, I always say I only know 4 things and they all start with F. So we might as well get in while the getting's good.
Jake, on that note, let's look at Week 2. There was some good, there was some bad, there was some ugly. Let's start with the good, for all things considered. Let's start with the good. You talked about Texas on you guys' Monday show. Obviously, they were wildly impressive. It was weird kind of how that game, it didn't go under the radar, but so much other stuff happened. There was some disappointments, if you will, but Texas, wildly impressive, beat down Michigan 31-12. What was the most impressive thing that Longhorns did in the Big House in your mind?
Well, they out Michigan. First off, if this was a game where, it's low scoring, the Michigan defense is shutting them down. Sark hits you a couple times like he always does with his bastardized routes and things like that. And that's a compliment. And it was 17-10 or something like that. You're like, all right, well, obviously Texas, that's a nice win. How back really is Texas, but that's not what happened. My biggest question for the Longhorns coming into this year, and it's what we talked about yesterday on the show, was would that physical identity carry over into another year? Because that's what built them last year, was their ability at the line of scrimmage, offensively and defensively, and then let the rest of the parts, really what Sark is best at, what Quinn is best at, let those things kind of merge and become a complete team. And even though Michigan isn't fantastic, right, they're not what they were last year, I think the question so far of whether the physical identity of Texas has been adopted or if it was borrowed, it's definitely been adopted. I mean, this is a team that can push you around up front. This is a team that can win a track meet. This is a team that can win a rock fight. We always say, whether it's college football, whether it's the NCAA tournament in college basketball, the teams that win the most can win the most ways. So when you're looking at this Texas team, it's 2 years in a row where they've gone on the road and eaten a big brand on national television. Last year it was Alabama. This year it's Michigan. And you can tell the confidence throughout that roster and throughout that coaching staff has permeated, and there's not an environment, there is not a team, there is not a weakness right now that I'm seeing on Texas that if you're a Longhorns fan should make you think, well, maybe we're not national championship caliber. Now, that's not saying Texas is going to win it, but the biggest problem Texas had was physicality, especially in the front seven on defense, and they seem to have fixed that. And since that's fixed, it's a wide open buffet for Sark and Ewers. Now you can just go get it. They can give it to you however you want it, and that makes them dangerous.
Jake, another team that was wildly impressive, the Tennessee Volunteers beat down NC State 51-10. And I feel like I gave NC State way too much credit going into this game.
Not me.
I thought, everybody was telling me this was going to be a 40-point blowout. I was like, I don't want to overreact to week 1 when it comes to the Wolfpack. It's more so a credit to Tennessee and this team being a complete bunch, every facet. They ran the ball for 250 yards. Nico looked really good. I don't even think, obviously, he's reached his ceiling yet. And that offense is humming. And then defensively, the front seven was the big reason we were all excited. They hold NC State to 39 yards rushing. Grayson McCall never got in any sort of groove, and this thing felt like it was over before it even started. Thoughts on Tennessee? And did that win over NC State change anything, maybe ceiling-wise or potential of this team-wise you thought about them coming into the year?
Well, as far as Nico is concerned, I don't think he has a ceiling. I think he's got a sunroof. The question is just how long is it going to stay open, and I don't see it closing anytime soon. First off, NC State, there was a lot of similarities and carryover to what we saw against Western Carolina. They weren't able to stop the run, and you thought, maybe their Mike went down, their Mike linebacker, their middle linebacker early in that game, taking over for Peyton Wilson. You thought maybe there was just some communication, alignment problems, but their personnel is good enough with that guy in there to not allow to be gashed in the run game. And then Grayson McCall in that first game was up and down, right? And he's in a new system. think some people kind of overlooked that. He went from that Jamie Chadwell RPO style system, kind of spread option identity, to more of a pro style drop back scheme. And those are two different things. Even if you're an experienced quarterback, your eyes are different. The timing is different. The progressions are different. So NC State looked a lot like they did week one. But the scariest thing about Tennessee, if you're somebody that hates Tennessee, if you're somebody that does not want Tennessee to do well, what happened on Saturday was a worst case scenario for you. Why? Because I don't think Nico played that great. I think he'd tell you he didn't play that great because they hold him to a very high standard, and he obviously has a lot of talent. Not that he played bad, but he didn't operate nearly as efficiently as he will, and Tennessee still dropped you by 40 or whatever it was. This Tennessee team, we talk about balance all the time. Balance keeps you on the beam. I just mentioned Texas can win a rock fight. They can win a track meet. The thing that has held Tennessee back is really depth on the line of scrimmage and really on defense, right? And when you operate at that warp speed pace, your biggest worry, whether, and Josh Heupel wants to run the ball. Obviously, you saw what they did last week. He wants to run the ball and play defense. All the smart coaches do. That's the common misconception about Lane and Josh and Lincoln and all these guys and Sark that, they just want to throw the ball 45 times a game. Man, hell no. They want to run the ball. Why? Well, you set the tone. It's kind of an alpha thing to do, but also it protects the quarterback. Not only from him not taking hits because he's handing the ball off, but it slows down defensive linemen on the play action because they do have to honor the run. They can't just pin their ears back on passing downs and go get Nico. But when you go that fast, you worry, hey, man, we get 3 or 4 3-and-outs in the first half. We don't have the depth on defense, or they hadn't in the past, to be able to not run out of gas in the fourth quarter. Well, not only do they have depth now, this is a damn good football team. I mean, they really are. Josh Heupel meant what he said in that press conference. Like, we're a defensive team. Like, watching them run around and watching the way they rotate guys, and the question was the secondary coming in this year, and they're going to continue to get better. But it's a whole heck of a lot easier to hide an average or inexperienced or undefined secondary with a really good front seven than it is the opposite way around. You can't do it. You can't cover guys for 8 seconds. So this Tennessee team, to me, is complete. And sometimes this is how long it takes to build a complete team. I mean, even when Tennessee was cooking with Hendon and winning games, they were running out of gas on defense, right? And when they would play the Bamas and the Georgias, you would really see it rear its head, and you almost had to play perfect offensively to win the game or stay in the game. Well, now Tennessee doesn't have to do that. In reality, Tennessee could put the brakes on the whole game, just go through a normal type cadence and beat you. So if you hate Tennessee, that is the worst outcome that you could have seen. Now, does that mean Tennessee is the best team in the country? I don't think they're the best team in the country, but they put themselves in a position to be able to beat anybody they play. And they put themselves in a position to continue to build this foundation that Josh Heupel has laid, and it starts and ends up front.
All right, Jake, we've been dancing around this one long enough. Let's go to what happened on the Plains. Cal beats Auburn.
No, we're good. We can skip that. We can sit down.
No. I got to get your – I know you've already put your thoughts out there, but I was – listen, I'm not out here requesting my bet back from Peyton Thorne or anything via Venmo, but I'm kind of curious what the hell happened. 4 interceptions from him. I feel like this is a game, Jake, we didn't take Cal seriously, and we paid the price dearly. I know you gave them a lot of credit. You got to give Cal a lot of credit. I mean, they just whooped that ass. So what did you see on Saturday? How big of a loss is this for Hugh Freeze?
Well, the biggest part of this loss, outside of, just losing sucks, is that Auburn had built up a ton of momentum, right? You look in recruiting. You look at coming out and basically beating Bishop Sycamore, whoever they played week 1, Alabama A&M, whatever. That shows you how bad they are, by 70. And after that game, and it'd be one thing if it was like just a crazy game, right? Where, you're just like, man, like that was written in the stars that was going to happen. No, Auburn just looked bad. And multiple things can be true at once. Emotionally, the quarterback always gets too much blame, and he always gets too much credit. But at the end of the day, when you look at this Auburn team and you go back and you really watch the tape, the Auburn at offensive tackle isn't very good. I know they've been a little bit beat up, but Peyton Thorne is a senior. And at this point, and I know this is what Hugh Freeze and them were hoping, is that he could be able to, at this point in his career, make up for deficiencies around him. But once again, Auburn is having to try and make up for his deficiencies. And if it was just an ability thing, that's one thing. I don't think Peyton Thorne's the most athletic guy in the world. He's athletic, but he's not the most athletic. He's not Milroe or any of these guys. He's not a great passer of the ball, right? He's not a pinpoint guy. But you would think mentally that would be his advantage, right? Because he understands he has to have that. I thought mentally he was awful on Saturday. And he, once again, panics in the pocket. I don't know how you can on one side, watch what Fernando Mendoza did, down 3 offensive linemen, with Auburn bringing pressure all the time and getting back there, but being calm, cool, and collected and throwing the hot and understanding where to go with the ball or even throwing the ball away. And then you look at Peyton Thorne, who's older, played more high-level snaps, and he's still a panicker. And, when you go back and you watch, it's always easy to say, well, that guy's open, that guy's open, that guy's open. But these are primary reads that he's missing, and they're wide open. And you come out in the first drive, you're on time, you're on point, you're on rhythm, you look great. Then you just totally forget. He makes young player mistakes as an old guy. And if somebody's going to go in there and throw 4 interceptions, you'd much rather it be a young guy so we can learn from it. I'd rather be young and dumb than old and blind. And there are other problems, right? It's not just on Peyton, but a lot of it is. And again, Auburn shouldn't be having to make up for the deficiencies of this guy. The only success this guy's had at quarterback, let's be honest, is when he had Keon Coleman and Jaden Reed and Kenneth Walker and a very competent offensive line. He can't be the engine of the car, right? He just has to try and not crash it. So if you're Hugh Freeze, you're in a tough spot right now. I think this is why you saw before the season, he kind of lamented not getting a quarterback from the portal. Deep down, Hugh knows. The guys, at some point, you are what you are, right? If you show me who you are enough, I'm going to believe you. Say the same thing about DJU. Say the same thing about Joe Milton. It's hard for older guys to make that jump. You don't see it a lot. You see younger guys, like you see the jump that Drew Aller made, right? Like to this year, new system, he can actually do it. I don't think Peyton Thorne could do it. But if there was a guy that could do it right now on Auburn's roster, Hugh Freeze would put him in. So the problem you run into if you're Hugh Freeze is, obviously, Peyton Thorne practices the best. Some guys practice better than they play. Some guys play better than they practice. Apparently, Peyton Thorne's the greatest practice player of all time. It's just the lights comes on, he closes his eyes and turns into Panic and Skywalker. But if you're Hugh Freeze, the biggest problem you have right now is that if he keeps playing this bad, which he'll be inconsistent, he'll be up and down. He may come out against New Mexico and look awesome and then fall apart. It's just, this is who he is. If you don't make a change, how can you ever look at another position and say, well, left guard, you're not playing well, we got to replace you. Hey, corner, boundary corner, you're not playing well, we got to replace you. Well, you don't replace the quarterback. The quarterback can go out of here and play awful, and you never replace him. So if you're Hugh Freeze, and I'm sure this is what he's doing, it's what he said he was going to do, it's what I said on the Sunday recap that they're going to have to do, you got to open the competition up during the week. And at least if Peyton Thorne has a better week of practice than Hank Brown or whoever, the locker room saw that you opened it up. And it's blatantly obvious that this is the best you got. Well, the worst part about that is you can be all in. You can want to give your all for the team and all that great stuff, which you have to win. But we are dealing with human beings. And if they realize that, yeah, this is the best we got, but the best we got isn't very good, it's tough to play for that guy. Like, that really tests, the locker room. Because believe it or not, some people don't want to believe it, but it's the truth. I heard Andre Ware talking about it the other day. Guys play harder for other guys. Like, why do you think recruits want to go with other good recruits? Like, if I'm a wide receiver watching Peyton Thorne throw that ball, it's amazing Auburn got the wide receivers they got. They may be the best recruiters in the history of the world. Because if I'm a wide receiver watching that dude can't throw a slant, consistency's like 30 years old, I don't want to go there because you can't get me the ball. I want to go to the league. You got to get me the ball. But if I'm Deuce Knight or somebody, I'm looking at that at the quarterback position like, dude, I may be able to come in and play early at a place like Auburn, which is a great place to play. So it's a tough spot for Hugh Freeze, but this is, again, why you miss at quarterback and there's no savior behind him, which apparently there's not. You're in big trouble in this sport. And it's kind of surprising that now in year 2, while you're trying to build this roster around, Auburn doesn't have a quarterback under Hugh Freeze who is a quarterback guy. Say what you want about him. but he's done really well mentoring quarterbacks and getting them better. It's just Peyton Thorne is a below average quarterback on an average team, and you can't trust him. I think a lot of times, Chris, he makes his mind up where he's going to throw for the ball snap. And that's what you do when you're worried. When you're like, oh no, I'm going to get hit. Dog, you're going to get hit. It's third down. You got to get that first down. You got to lower your head to get the first down. Get the first down. Like maybe Auburn needs an ugly quarterback or something. Maybe we just need to get some ugly country boy. Like give me Diego Pavia. I'll take 3/4 of Diego Pavia over what Auburn has right now. I can promise you that. And they probably would too.
And Diego Pavia will make that trip, obviously, to the Plains later this season. He is 1-0 there. Do you hand the keys to Hank Brown? I mean, it's like...
Well, I mean,
you're not at practice, I know.
Chris, here's what's going to happen, okay? I think they're going to go through the week of practice. Peyton Thorne will look great. Hank will probably do some good things. And they're going to say, we're going to start Peyton, see how he does against New Mexico. And if he goes out there and does well, they'll keep him out there. If he goes out there and struggles, then they'll put Hank Brown in. That's what's going to happen. The worst part about it is if you're Auburn, is the way this guy's worked is he'll go out there against New Mexico and it'll all look fixed. And then you'll go out there against Arkansas and it will revert. So it's a tough spot if you're Auburn, but like there's no magic formula here. Like there's no great answer.
Jake, we did have one conference game in week 2 that I want to highlight. South Carolina, Kentucky. The Gamecocks laid the beat down on Mark Stoops, 31-6. Jake, watching that game, leaving that game, were you more impressed with South Carolina or disappointed in Kentucky? Because I think both angles are fair in this one.
Well, outside of Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois, this was the most shocking result on the board for me. Not that South Carolina won.
The way it went down.
But I mean, and I had this game on the YouTube multi-view, and I'm watching Kentucky's offense. I'm just like looking for Eddie Grant, like just hiding somewhere with a microphone. I mean, that was inept. Doesn't even begin to explain offensively the way that Kentucky looked. But that doesn't take any credit away from what South Carolina with a young quarterback was able to go do. And I think you saw it wasn't pretty. It wasn't on time. It wasn't super efficient. Lenoris did a really good job of doing what he had to do, and that was create when the play broke down. You saw him find guys wide open in the scramble drill. That's why as a defensive guy, I was never more scared than when the play broke down and the quarterback extended it. Because now the organization's done, you really just got to stick to a man. That's what it becomes. So they were able to hit some of those big plays. I thought South Carolina defensively did not take their foot off the gas. They gave Kentucky no hope. And that's what you want to see if you're Shane Beamer. I think Dylan Stewart may be the best young defensive lineman overall in the country. That cat is different. But if you're South Carolina, and this is what we're going to talk about actually today on Crain Company, you feel really good about where you're at, okay, because you're 2-0. You look better than you did against Old Dominion. Maybe week 1 was an aberration. The question now becomes, you've built it to this point if you're Shane Beamer. This is the point that you're building to, right? Game day's coming. LSU's at home. You got a young quarterback that everybody's starting to believe in. South Carolina right now is not getting looked at like the ugly redheaded stepchild. This is your opportunity against a quality opponent to show that what you have been doing behind closed doors is finally here. The setting is going to be electric. I've coached in that place. Towels are going to be waving. They're going to have the electronic music playing. No. That bird's going to be in that cage. They're going to be freaking out. The liquids are going to be flowing. And this is your moment. So is South Carolina going to be a team that continues to build on last week? Or is this going to be a team like we've seen in the past that is up and down and gives you one flavor of ice cream next week and then 1 week and then gives you broccoli the next? So this moment for Shane Beamer is pivotal. This is an inflection point. This is a turning point for this program because you win this one, it just gets hotter and it gets more important. So I think the answer is a little bit of both, but I thought South Carolina went in there and handled business, and when they had a chance to kill them, they killed them. And that's something that is you're either born with. It's tough to put that into somebody. And I'm excited for Shane for this moment, but they got to go take it. It's right there. It's you tell my guys all the time, There's a bag of money on the ground just waiting for y'all to reach down and grab it. Go grab it.
Jake, before we move into week 3, other big takeaways for you from week 2? We didn't touch on Alabama blasting USF in the fourth quarter specifically.
Yeah.
Arkansas, what kind of felt like
Man.
they choked that game away in Stillwater. Mississippi State losing on the road at Arizona State. There were some noteworthy results. What else stood out to you in week 2 of the season?
Well, Arkansas looked like a team that is learning how to win. You know how you learn to win? You learn how to not lose. Most teams lose games. They don't win them. That's what Arkansas did. You breathe life back into a team. I think they're better than Oklahoma State overall. I still believe that. But Oklahoma State, like most old teams do, didn't make the mistakes that Arkansas did. And they were able to win the game. And obviously being at home helped. You look at Mississippi State, that roster's just not ready yet. I do think what Dillingham's done at Arizona State, Arizona State's a power run team. Wisconsin has air raid principles. What a time to be alive. Outside of that, Bama still got really good players. But if they're going to win a national championship and beat teams with even rosters or rosters that are a little bit better than theirs, they've got to stop playing so sloppy and disorganized. And Kalen knows that. They're just talented enough to get away with it against a team like South Florida. But you're not going to get away with it against Georgia. You're not going to get away with it against Texas and some of these other high-level teams. And Alabama fans expect championships, not just beating South Florida or beating teams that you're better than. So, overall, week 1 was chalky. Week 2 was drunk. I'm just interested to see what week 3 brings.
Jake, diving into week 3, I want to stick with the Crimson Tide because you mentioned the sloppiness, double-digit penalties, 3 turnovers in that game against South Florida. Again, the final score is not indicative of how close that game was for 75% of the game. Do you put Bama on any sort of upset alert at Camp Randall? Especially if they play sloppy like that. The first road test of the Kalen DeBoer era. I'm not sure Wisconsin's got the bullets in the gun to pull this off, but could we look up and this is another fourth quarter game?
Well, when you look at Wisconsin, I don't trust Tyler Van Dyke. Okay, we can just start and end there. The quarterback at Wisconsin. Not that I think he's the worst, but I don't think he's good enough. Alabama's going to have to play sloppy if they're going to lose this game. Like, it's going to have to be similar to what we've seen. Wisconsin, Luke Fickell's going to have a great plan defensively, right? He's continuing to build that program. I just don't think there's anybody in that state outside of if you're on the Green Bay Packers roster that can tackle Jalen Milroe. I think that's what you're going to get a heavy dose of. So if Alabama keeps them in the game and gives Wisconsin a chance in the fourth quarter to win it, they could. It's a very narrow path to victory to me. But if Alabama goes and just plays well, they'll cover because they're better. They're too athletic. Not that Wisconsin didn't have good athletes, but they ain't got that. And at some point, it's going to click for Bama. Like Kalen is just, if we're going to go off past history, he's never inherited a better roster than he has right now. At some point, they're going to figure it out. And if they figure it out against Wisconsin, it could get ugly because I don't think Van Dyke, say what you want about South Florida. They couldn't throw the ball, but they were having success running it because Brown, gave that element. They had some moving parts that kind of kept Bama on their toes. Van Dyke can't do that, and he makes catastrophic mistakes. They're not small mistakes. So Alabama's going to have to give this one to Wisconsin, if we're going to be honest. I expect to see and sometimes going on the road helps, man. Sometimes going on the road focuses you more on those things, believe it or not. I think Alabama may run away with this one early.
Jake, what's your intrigue level like in the Missouri-Boston College game? Ranked on ranked. This one almost kind of feels like it's flying under the radar, but do we finally see Mizzou get a little bit tested early in the season? And, I think that's a big question we have right now with teams like Mizzou, Ole Miss. They just haven't played anybody. Boston College doesn't feel like that typical, non-conference, quote-unquote, cupcake. We saw what they did to Florida State. I feel like with that quarterback, the athleticism he presents, it's going to test kind of a new look defense for them. So just intrigue level by this game in Como.
Well, you hit it right on the head. We're going to find out about the defense. That's the question about Missouri, right? We know Brady Cook. We know Luther Burden. We know what they can do offensively. That's not the question. The question is, are they good enough on defense to be a balanced enough team to be able to beat other balanced teams that are good? And it's going to be the first test. And it's a great test. We saw what Castellanos did. Again, you talked about Florida State, the way the offensive line was able to operate. I know FSU looks really deficient, but it's not like you're playing, Alabama State or anything like that. They were tested and they passed the test with flying colors. Bill O'Brien does a really good job. It's that NFL mindset. They're going to out-formation you. They're going to motion you to find out what coverage you're in. So if you're Missouri, this game's really going to come down to how many times can we keep Castellanos in the pocket and make him beat us from the pocket. You're not going to be able to do it every time. He's going to escape. They're going to have quarterback design runs, which truly gets a hat on a hat, which you're going to have to find a way to stop. But over a 4-quarter game, I think if you make Castellanos stay in the pocket and try and beat you through the air, you give yourself defensively the best chance to have success. Now, that doesn't mean he won't. That I don't think he's a terrible thrower of the football by any stretch of the imagination, but it's the creative plays where he really hurts people, and in the past has hurt himself. That's still a question that we've got to get answered from Castellanos. Is this going to be something where when you do improvise, are you more Ryan Stiles, or do you just suck at it? Or does it turn into a catastrophe 50% of the time? You can't live that way. Bill O'Brien doesn't want to live that way. So it's a big test for Missouri. I think they'll be able to have success on offense, which is not going to shock anybody, and they should. But now we get to find out, test their mettle a little bit on defense, and see what this Missouri team is really about, see if the hype is really real. After losing Blake Baker, having to make some adjustments and bringing in some new guys, and losing, Smith before the year really hurt off the edge, the Georgia transfer. But if you're a Missouri fan, you want to know. Good, bad, or indifferent, you want to know. What do we got? So at least when we're going up against somebody, the Georgias, the Tennessees, whoever, we got an idea of what we're going to see, or where do we at least need to improve so we can put our team in the best position to win.
Jake, let's go to a pair of teams that I was admittedly skeptical on coming in the season for different reasons. Texas A&M and Florida. And you think about the magnitude of this game if week one, just hypothetically, had gone different for each. I mean, we might be talking about this is the site where College Game Day is going to and just the hype around this one. But Texas A&M needs a win. This is the first SEC game for Mike Elko. You want to rebound from the week one loss to Notre Dame, and you don't want to fall to 1-2. Florida and Billy Napier really need a win on the home field. DJ Lagway cooks up Samford last week, but Graham Mertz is going to get the start. What are your thoughts on this one? And we were talking about the quarterback position with Auburn earlier, but I mean, how would you handle the Mertz-Lagway thing? Because you obviously don't just want to bail on your guy who was really, really good last year. And all throughout the offseason, this guy's the leader of your football team. This is his team. He's QB1. He's the present. Lagway's the future. But you also can't deny the fact there's a good chance DJ Lagway can help you win games right now. So how do you handle that? And just thoughts on this game and this matchup, which I feel like is fascinating at the Swamp.
Well, as far as betting on this one, I'm not touching this one. If I did, it would have to be the under. You start with A&M. You get a chance to get back on the mat right after you lose to Notre Dame. Then you watch Notre Dame lose to Northern Illinois. But the question is going to continue to be after that first performance, is Connor Wegman going to trust that injury or not against a quality opponent? I mean, Mike Elko basically said it after the game. Looks like he didn't trust it. If you go back and watch him in the pocket, look at his feet. He's never settled. He looked rushed. He looked sped up. And that's exactly the opposite of the Connor Wegman that we've kind of seen in the past. He's looked composed, poised, mature. It's really been one of his best qualities outside of his ability to throw the ball and kind of move and maneuver within the pocket. You want to see that again against a Florida team that, has pretty decent players. It's not McNeese State. But again, another thing, if you're A&M, is you want to see the skill position on the outside. Like, do we got guys that can go make a difference? And, if we're going to do some of the things that we wanted to do in this first year under Mike Elko, you've got to have guys that can make some wow plays. You just do. I mean, the guys aren't going to just be wide open all the time. Somebody's got to turn a 50-50 ball into an 80-20 ball. Like, somebody's got to make two guys miss and go score. Somebody's got to strike the fear of God in that secondary to open things up in the run game in other areas. Now, if you're Florida, if you're Billy, you're in a tough spot here. Because, again, there's what's best for the team, and then there's self-preservation. Well, DJ Lagway's your life raft, right? He's your floating door that Kate Winslet is on. Right now, he's Leo DiCaprio. He's half-ass in the water, half out. You're either going to freeze to death, or you're going to tell her to move her ass over and get on that floating door with her. So if you don't play DJ Lagway after last week, and it looks bad, you look even dumber because you took the great hope out and you put in Graham Mertz, a guy who, you brought it up, did some really good things. He's a guy that saved you a lot last year and really overperformed. But we all know Billy's only chance is there needs to be some hope going forward that, man, we can't afford to lose DJ Lagway. Let's keep Billy. The schedule's tough next year. And the recruits' reaction to DJ Lagway is big too, because week one, Miami's team was going over to your recruits laughing at y'all.
Well, now they look at DJ Lagway and they're like, man, Florida's kind of cool again. Wait a minute. Maybe I don't need to just throw Florida under the rug yet. So playing two quarterbacks is not ideal outside of, one being a true Wildcat guy, kind of like Michigan. Not that that's working great, but we saw Tebow and Chris Leak and that thing kind of work as you're setting the foundation for the next guy. But it's really hard to get into ask SMU. I mean, it's really hard to get into a rhythm. Like, what's the rotation going to look like? That's the thing. Because, I mean, if Graham Mertz comes out there and he's cooking, you can't take him out. Like, you got to let him keep going. But if he goes out there and has one bad drive, is his career over at Florida? And now it's like, all right, DJ Lagway, here we go. You're going to get some up and some down from a young guy. And Elko wants that young quarterback out there. You can say what you want. Like, Lagway's more talented than Mertz. He's going to be a better player. But Mike Elko would much rather have DJ Lagway out there than he would Graham Mertz. It's just the truth. Some people in the comments are like, that's not true. Well, I guarantee if you sat him down and you asked him, he would much rather scheme for that guy. Another thing here, and Billy brought this up, is gamesmanship. Now you got to prepare for both. And they are different players, right? DJ can run. You can do different things with him. Not that Mertz is a paraplegic, but like he can't run like DJ Lagway can. So a lot of this is gamesmanship too. So is it something where if Graham Mertz takes the team down the field, you get inside the 10-yard line, do you put DJ Lagway in to run the ball? I mean, you run a risk doing that. So it's a tough place for Billy to be in, but you got to do something, man. And it's going to be interesting to watch for sure.
Jake, how worried about Oklahoma are you? 16-12 winners over Houston last week. I talked to some folks in Norman this week. They're really concerned about the offense. When you look at them, again, this game against Tulane, it's not the headliner, but buddy, Tulane is not to be messed with. They took Kansas State down to the wire. I'm curious to see if they can put together back-to-back performances against teams that probably have more talent than them. But I mean, this is, in my opinion, they're talking about it down there. This is a losable football game if the offense doesn't show up.
Well, I mean, everybody in the Oklahoma fan base wanted to burn me like a witch in Salem this offseason when I was like, dude, you got a brand new quarterback and a brand new offensive line going into the SEC. Like, we're not even in the SEC yet. And it looks like you had to replace both. That's not an easy thing to do. Even getting offensive linemen from the transfer portal. That's not an easy thing. Jackson Arnold's going to be fine. Jackson Arnold's going to be a really good player. But, like, this is what I expected. So, like, shocked? No. I mean, now, Houston, I was shocked at how bad Houston looked week one against UNLV and that Oklahoma struggled against them, how they did offensively. But I'm not surprised by any stretch of the imagination. But you survived it. Now you're going to get another test with Tulane coming up here with a guy in Menza who just looked pretty daggum good against Kansas State throwing the ball. And I got a lot of respect for John Summerall, the coach there who was at Troy. But, if you're Oklahoma, this is what I thought you would look like early. The question is, how much better can you get? Like, can you build off that, learn from those mistakes against a good Tulane team who's not the best team you're going to play, but they're better than what you've seen as you get ready to then play Tennessee and then go to Auburn. So as far as surprise, no, it looks like what I thought. I think Oklahoma fans are surprised because fans short for fanatical. And you're always going to look at the best and be like, oh, man, you don't know what you're talking about, man. Our offensive line coach is 130 years old, and Jackson Arnold's, he's the Dylan Raiola made over again, whatever. But Oklahoma's going to be fine in the long run. People that are questioning Venables, I've seen a little bit of it. That's ridiculous. But this is what happens when you replace those two positions at the same time. Like you can't make up for deficiencies because you're both working together. You're building the parachute on the way down. So it's what it's going to be right now. And you hope if you're an Oklahoma fan that you learn from the tape and you have enough talented personnel, which I think they do, to grow from it and get better from it while winning. I would much rather play bad and win and learn from it than play bad and lose and learn from it.
Jake, South Carolina and LSU doing battle in Columbia. You mentioned this a little bit earlier. The site of College Game Day will be at this football game. It's going to be an intense environment. Might be a little bit sloppy, a little bit wet, some rain in the forecast, thunderstorms, if you will. But that won't stop the crowd at Williams-Brice Stadium from showing up and showing out. Just your thoughts on this game. You mentioned how important it is for Shane Beamer in year 4, the inflection point maybe for his program and maybe his tenure there. And then for Brian Kelly. Jake, LSU folks are telling me this might be the most important game of his tenure at LSU to this point. I mean, feels like there's a lot riding on this one, especially when you factor in just where the two programs are, their expectations for the season, and expectations for both of their head coaches.
Yeah, well, I mean, LSU feels like they're the better football team, right? Like, this is a game that, you saw at the beginning of the year. You're like, hey, it's on the road, but you take this one on the road because you felt like South Carolina, there's a lot of questions. And there are. I think there still are. But if I'm Shane Beamer personally, I hope it's a monsoon on Saturday. Like, I think that helps out South Carolina a lot. Not that I think South Carolina needs to get incredibly lucky to win this game, but I think it needs to be kind of sloppy and a little bit knocked down, drag out, and probably low scoring. Because if Nuss is cooking with the guys they got with Lacey and them on the outside, that's because this is what LSU does. Like, they don't throw the ball down the field week one. They play conservative offensively from that standpoint. Then they just let the monster out of the door. Like we saw against Mississippi State a couple years ago. Like, oh, well, there it is. Yeah, start throwing the ball down the field. So if I'm South Carolina, I kind of want this to be nasty. I want it to come down to the run game. You look at LSU, feels like they lose another defensive lineman each week. And if you're South Carolina, I think it would behoove you for the weather to be bad. Now, you can't count on that. But, the truth is the truth, in my opinion. I think the advantage would be to them. But, yeah, I talked about the inflection point at the beginning. Like, you've been building to this crescendo. Like, this is game day's coming. It's here. All eyes on you. It's like all of a sudden, you got challenged to a dance battle in front of the whole high school. You've been working on your dance moves all week. You got Dancing Rick out there looking at you. Like, what are you going to do? So that's what I find fascinating. And this is a game it's tough to project. Like, if the weather's bad, I like South Carolina. If the weather's good, I like LSU. I know that's maybe an oversimplification, but in the long run, over 4 quarters, I do think LSU has better overall players and more experienced players than what South Carolina does. You got a young quarterback that, was able to score some points because he created. It's going to come down to the run game. How much can you protect Lenoris in the run game because it opens everything else?
Jake, finally, appreciate you taking the time. Week 3, what excites you most, whether it be SEC or outside the conference?
It's just that football season's back. I'm starting to really lose my patience with some of these people that are like, well, the week 2 slate's just not very good. That was amazing football to watch last week. Like, that was a great weekend of football. Like, is there the most mega matchups this weekend? No, but it beats there being nothing. It beats not having college football. So let's be grateful that college football is back. If you love the game, you love the game. Like, it doesn't matter the week. So we're going to learn more. Like I said, week 1 was chalk. Week 2 was drunk. What's week 3? Are we going to meet in the middle somewhere? Like, that's and watching teams, grow throughout is one of the most fun parts for me as well. So, man, I'm just glad football's back. You won't hear us at Crain Company complaining.
Amen, Jake. Amen. Well said, my friend. Appreciate you taking the time as always, Jake. It's always a pleasure. Jake Crain of Crain Company. Make sure you check out his work. Hey, let folks know, just in case they don't somehow, some way, let them know when you guys are live, where all the content's at, where they can find you.
Yeah, well, the easiest way to find us is just go to YouTube. If you listen, it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that jazz. It's CRAIN and Company. I mean, we're on Roku too, which I always forget to say. We go live from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Central. You can't catch us live. It stays on demand. Y'all know how it works. But we take live calls like the Feinbaum Show. I think ours is better, but that's just me. Obviously, it's my show. So we have a live chat. Our audience is... it's fun. It's a fun group of people to get in there because, we don't always agree, which makes it fun. Like, if we all agree to be the most boring show ever, we're right a lot more than we're wrong, but it's the beauty's in the banter, and it always will be.
Jakey, the man, appreciate you taking the time. We'll do it again next week.
Hey, Chris, proud of you, buddy. See you.